There comes a moment in life when everything that used to make you happy simply stops working. The things you loved doing lose their shine. The people you enjoyed seeing no longer bring that warmth. The dreams you nurtured seem distant, hollow, almost childish. And you look around, trying to figure out what's wrong with you. Why doesn't anything bring you joy anymore? Why does it feel like you're watching life from the outside, as if everything is just a sequence of meaningless obligations? Most people panic at this moment. They think they're depressed, that they've lost their way, that something inside broke beyond repair. But what if I told you that this emptiness isn't a sign that you're failing? In this video, you're going to understand why the loss of joy isn't the end, but the beginning of something much greater. Because on the other side of this emotional desert, there's a form of consciousness that's much deeper, more stable, and quieter waiting for you. So watch until the end, because what I'm about to reveal could completely change how you see this moment in your life. And if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, subscribe now, because what we're going to talk about here might be exactly the missing piece for you to understand what's happening. So, let's dive in. You wake up, grab your phone, scroll through the feed, nothing touches you. You open the playlist that always lifted your spirits, hit play, and nothing, just noise. You try to force yourself to do that activity that always energized you, maybe writing, painting, running, cooking. But it's like your body is there, but you're not. Like every movement is automatic, lifeless, colorless. And the worst part isn't even that. The worst part is when you try to talk to someone about what you're feeling, and the response is always the same. You need to get out more. Try doing something different. Maybe you're just tired. But it's not tiredness. It's not a lack of novelty. It's something much deeper. It's as if the frequency of your soul has shifted. And now, everything that used to resonate with you simply finds no echo anymore. You look back and see the person you were 2-3 years ago. That person had clear dreams, defined desires, a list of things that made them happy. And now? Now you barely recognize that version of yourself. It seems naive, superficial, almost foreign, like you've outgrown your own emotional skin. And at this point, the question that won't stop haunting you is, what happened to me? The answer is simple, but frightening. You evolved, but the world around you, including your old sources of pleasure, didn't evolve with you. And that's why everything feels empty now. Because you no longer fit in that mold. You no longer fit in those shallow conversations. You no longer fit in those cheap distractions that used to be enough. Your soul has grown. And now it demands something deeper, more real, more true. Only, you don't know what that is yet. And that's the hardest part. Because you're not just losing the old joys. You haven't found the new ones yet. You're in the middle, in the void, in the desert. And deserts are places where you only have two choices. Give up, or cross through. Most people, when they reach this point, desperately try to reclaim what they had before. They go back to the same places, the same people, the same activities, hoping the magic will return. But it doesn't return. Because it's not about recovering the old. It's about allowing the new to emerge. And the new can only emerge when you stop resisting the void. When you understand that this emptying isn't punishment. It's preparation. Life isn't taking joy away from you. It's inviting you to find a joy that doesn't depend on anything external. A joy that comes from within. Silent, stable, permanent. But to get there, you need to go through the funeral of who you were. And funerals hurt. Even when they're necessary. There's something almost no one tells you about spiritual growth. It's not linear. It's not a staircase you climb step by step, always upward. Sometimes growing means descending. It means dismantling structures you spent years building. It means releasing certainties that gave you security. It means accepting that what worked until now won't take you there. And it's exactly in this process of dismantling that joy disappears. Because joy, at least the superficial joy that most people know, depends on external stimuli. It depends on novelty, achievement, validation, constant movement. But when you enter a phase of deep transformation, these stimuli lose their power. Not because you're depressed, but because your consciousness is reorganizing at a level that the external can no longer reach. Imagine you've spent your whole life listening to music at a specific volume, and suddenly, without warning, someone turns the volume down by half. The music keeps playing, but you can barely hear it. Your natural tendency would be to yell, "Turn it up! I can't hear anything!" But what's happening isn't that the music got quieter. It's that your ears are being recalibrated to pick up frequencies you didn't even know existed before. Only during this recalibration process, you're temporarily deaf to what was loud and clear before. And it's agonizing, because it feels like you've lost something, when in reality, you're gaining access to something much greater. There's a concept in depth psychology that explains this perfectly. It's the difference between the ego and the self. The ego is the part of you that identifies with roles, achievements, pleasures, desires, fears. It's the part that says, I am this, I want that, I like that. The self, on the other hand, is something much vaster. It's the totality of your being, the essence that exists behind all the roles, all the identifications, all the desires. And the self doesn't feed on external stimuli. It feeds on truth, on presence, on deep connection with yourself. When you're living predominantly through the ego, joy comes easily, because the ego loves novelties, achievements, validations. But when life pushes you toward a phase of encountering the self, the ego goes into crisis, because suddenly, nothing it always wanted seems to make sense. And that's when you feel you've lost your joy. But you haven't lost it. You're just being invited to find a form of joy that the ego could never understand. A joy that doesn't depend on anything happening. A joy that exists simply because you exist. Calm, quiet, silent, almost imperceptible, but unshakable. Only to reach this joy, you need to cross the desert of losing the old joy. And this desert has no shortcuts. You can try to speed up the process. You can try to distract yourself, medicate yourself, keep yourself busy. But the desert is still there, waiting. Because it's not optional. It's an essential part of the journey. And the faster you accept this, the faster you cross through. Now, let me ask you a question. Have you ever noticed that the things that gave you pleasure before had something in common? They took you away from yourself. The loud music that made you forget your problems. The party that disconnected you from your worries. The relationship that made you feel complete. The achievement that validated you. All of this was, in a way, an escape. Not that it was bad, but it was an escape. A temporary exit from the anguish of simply being. And for a long time, that worked. Because you needed those escapes. You needed those breaks from your own consciousness. But there comes a moment when life decides you don't need to escape anymore. That you're strong enough to stay with yourself, with the silence, with the void, with the truth. And that's when it begins to remove, one by one, all your escape routes. Not out of cruelty, but out of love, because it knows you're ready for something greater, even if you don't know it yet. So what used to excite you loses its charm. What used to distract you stops working. What used to complete you reveals its emptiness. And there you are, with no way out, no escape, no anesthesia. Face to face with yourself. And this encounter is terrifying at first. Because when you're alone with yourself, without distractions, everything you've always avoided feeling begins to emerge. The sadness you never processed, the anger you always swallowed, the fear you always disguised, the loneliness you always tried to fill. Everything comes to the surface, all at once, unfiltered. And you think, I knew it. I knew there was something wrong with me. That's why I was always running. But no, there's nothing wrong with you. What you're feeling isn't illness. It's cleansing. It's the psyche reorganizing itself. It's the unconscious bringing to the surface everything that needs to be seen, felt, integrated. And yes, it hurts. It hurts like a broken bone being set back in place. But the pain isn't the problem. The pain is the healing process. And on the other side of this pain, on the other side of this confrontation with everything you've always avoided, there's a freedom you've never experienced. The freedom of no longer needing to run from yourself. The freedom of being able to sit in silence without despair. The freedom of not depending on anything external to feel whole. And when you reach this freedom, joy returns. But it's not the same joy as before. It's a different joy, quiet, deep. That doesn't shout but whispers. That doesn't depend on anything but sustains everything. And this joy, once found, no one can take from you. Because it's not in things, it's in you. But there's a trap in this process. And a lot of people fall into it. The trap is thinking that, because you're going through this phase of emptying, you need to force a new identity. Radically change your life. Leave everything behind. Start from scratch. And sometimes, yes, external changes are necessary. But most of the time, what needs to change isn't what you do. It's how you relate to what you do. Because the problem wasn't the job, the relationship, the routine. The problem was that you were living all of it from the wrong place. From the ego. From the compulsive search for pleasure, validation, escape. And now, you're being invited to live the same things from a different place. From the self. From presence. From truth. And when you do that, everything changes. Even if nothing changes. Because it's not the scenery that determines your experience. It's the consciousness with which you inhabit the scenery. You can be in the most incredible job in the world and feel empty. Or you can be washing dishes and feel deep peace. The difference isn't in what you do. It's in who you are while you're doing it. And that's why trying to reclaim the old joy through external changes rarely works. Because you take yourself to the new scenery. And if you haven't changed inside, the new scenery quickly becomes as empty as the old one. What needs to change is internal. It's how you relate to life. It's the capacity to be present without needing something extraordinary to be happening. It's the ability to find beauty in the ordinary, depth in the simple, meaning in what seems meaningless. And this isn't learned by reading. It isn't learned by listening. It's only learned by crossing through. Crossing through the void, crossing through the desert, crossing through the loss of the old joy until you find the new joy. And there's no shortcut, no formula, no step-by-step. There's only surrender. Surrender to the process. Trust that the void isn't the end, but the passage. And courage to keep walking even when it seems there's nothing ahead. Because there is. There always is. You just can't see it yet. Because it's dark. But darkness isn't the absence of light. It's the presence of mystery. And from mystery, the new is born. Always. Let me tell you what happens after. After you cross through. After you stop resisting the void and simply stay. You stay with the silence. You stay with the absence. You stay with the lack of meaning. At first, it's uncomfortable. Your mind wants to fill the space. It wants to find something to do, think, feel. But you resist the impulse. You stay. And gradually, something begins to change. The void stops being frightening. It becomes spacious. Like you've lived your whole life in a cramped apartment and suddenly moved into a house with a yard. At first, the space feels strange, excessive, even threatening. But then you realize, here I can breathe. And that's exactly what happens. You begin to breathe again. Not that short, anxious breathing of someone always trying to get somewhere, but a deep, calm breathing of someone who can finally just be. And in this space, in this silence, something begins to emerge. Not from outside, from within. A voice. Quiet. Almost imperceptible. But clear. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand. It doesn't accuse. It just is. And it begins to show you things. It shows you that you spent years searching for joy in places that could never give you true joy. It shows you that you confused pleasure with joy, distraction with peace, validation with love. It shows you that the life you were living was, in large part, a reaction to the fear of stopping and looking within. And this revelation doesn't come with judgment. It comes with compassion, with understanding, with forgiveness. Because you did the best you could with the consciousness you had. And now, you have a different consciousness. And with this different consciousness, you can make different choices. Not necessarily dramatic choices, but truer choices. You can choose to be more in silence. Choose deeper conversations. Choose less but better. Choose presence instead of performance. Choose truth instead of approval. And these choices, even if small, begin to change everything. Because they're aligned with who you truly are. Not with who you think you should be. Not with who others expect you to be. But with who you are, in essence. When you remove all the masks, all the defenses, all the escapes, and when you begin to live from this place, joy returns. But it's not that euphoric, loud joy that depends on something happening. It's a quiet, silent joy that's always there, deep down, like an underground current. You can be sad and it's there. You can be afraid and it's there. You can be tired and it's there. Because it's not an emotion, it's a state of being aligned with your own truth, of being at peace with what you are, with what you're not, with what you're becoming. And this state doesn't depend on anything. It simply is. And once you find it, you realize you never lost your joy. You were just looking in the wrong place. You were looking outside, when it was always inside, waiting, quiet, patient, ready to be recognized. And now, you recognize it. And even if the world around stays the same, even if people stay the same, even if circumstances remain challenging, something in you has changed. Something deep, unshakable, permanent. You've found a place within yourself that nothing can touch. And from this place, anything is possible. Not because you have superpowers, but because you finally stopped fighting yourself. You stopped trying to be what you're not. You stopped seeking outside what can only be found inside. And in this surrender, in this alignment, in this truth, you're finally free. Free to be, free to feel, free to live. Not a perfect life, but a true life. And a true life, however imperfect, always has more meaning than a life built on lies, escapes, and appearances. So if you're in this moment now, if you're feeling that nothing brings you joy anymore, if you're in the void, in the desert, in the darkness, know that you're not lost. You're exactly where you need to be. You're on the threshold, between the old and the new, between who you were and who you're becoming. And yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it's scary. Yes, it's lonely. But it's also sacred, because it's in this space that the impossible becomes possible, that the new is born. That true joy is found, not the joy you seek, but the joy you are. So don't give up. Don't go back. Don't try to resurrect what's already dead. Let it die. Let it go. Let the void be void. And trust. Trust that on the other side of this void, there's something waiting for you. Something greater, deeper, truer than anything you've ever experienced. And when you get there, you'll look back and understand. You'll understand that the loss of joy wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The beginning of your true life. The life that only you can live. The life that was waiting for you to have the courage to embrace it. And this life is worth every second of darkness you crossed through to find it. I know this video was intense. I know it might have touched places that hurt. But I hope it also brought clarity. I hope you understood that what you're feeling isn't failure. It's transformation. Transformation always looks like death before it looks like rebirth. If this content resonated with you, if you recognized yourself in this journey, leave in the comments, "I'm crossing through the desert," because that shows me you're not alone. And it shows you too, because there are so many people going through this right now. So many people in the same process. And knowing you're not alone already lightens half the weight. And if you want to go even deeper into this journey of self-discovery and transformation, I've prepared 2 special materials that can accompany you in this process. The first is the ebook 21 Days of Transformation with Carl Jung, where you'll find profound practices to cross through this inner desert and emerge transformed. And the second is the Soul Survival Manual, an essential guide to navigate these moments of emptiness and reconstruction. The links are in the first pinned comment right below. And if this video helped you in any way, consider leaving a like and sharing it with someone who might also need to hear this. Sometimes, a simple message at the right time can change everything. Thank you for staying until here, for having the courage to look within, for allowing these words to touch you. See you in the next video. And until then, remember, you didn't lose your joy. You're just being guided toward a deeper joy. A joy that no one and nothing can take from you. Thank you for being here. See you in the next video.